Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Other Side of Addiction podcast. I am your host, Al Richards, and today we're going to be speaking with my friend Luke, who is across the pond, as they say. He's at Essex, UK, which is just outside of London, if I understood him right, because sometimes I get right in my notes too quick. And I was actually on Luke's show here just about a week ago, so it's an honor to have him on my show today. So, Luke, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Awesome. Thanks very much for having me, Al. It's a pleasure to be on the show.
Absolutely. And today, again, we're going to be talking about how to handle a particular part of recovery. And I got that out of your bio. However, before we really start touching base on that, what got you to do what you do? Because you also do a podcast, as we just mentioned, called Inside Addiction, right?
Yeah,
And I think both of us kind of got into the podcast because of our past or history or whatever it may be.
yeah. So for me, I guess my journey in many ways starts before I was born with my mum. So my mum, she had her own journey of struggling with drugs and alcohol. And she was in and out of rehab a few times and went to jail for a short while as well, and had her own struggles with addiction. And that led to me being born premature. So I was born premature at 26 weeks, and as the story goes, my head was the size of a tennis ball, and I weighed like 1 pound as much as a bag of sugar, because I was so premature from mum drinking and doing drugs when I was born. And my dad used to hold me in his hands, and his hands were probably as big as mine are now. And my head used to poke out the top of his hands, and my little legs used to dangle down the bottom of his hands, and my whole body was like the size of his hands. He just used to hold me like this. So I was such a diddy little baby. And that's kind of where it started from me, really fighting for my life. Literally, I did die 3 times when I was born. So I was fighting for my life from day one, fighting, in many ways from drugs and alcohol, being born in that difficult situation, being premature and fighting. And that then led me to grow up with my mum, who was having her own journey of drinking and using drugs. And to fast forward a bit, when I was 10 years old, she passed away from drinking and from doing drugs. It just got to the point where it was just too much and her body just gave up. But for me, Al, as a 10-year-old kid, I didn't really know how to deal with that trauma, how to deal with that pressure. I just didn't understand. So, to be honest, on an unconscious level, I just ripped out anything that connected my head to my heart. I just shut all of my emotions down. And the environment I was in was around my 2 older brothers at the time. And we're all guys, with my dad, obviously, and we were just like boys with boys. So we just used to beat each other up. That grief just came out in anger and aggression. And because I was the youngest, I always used to get the shortest end of the stick.
Literally.
Yeah. Because I was the youngest and the smallest, right? I'd always come worse off. So I've been fighting for a lot of my life. And then as time forwarded on, growing up in that sort of masculine environment, not being in touch with my emotions, not even knowing what emotions are, I then started to be introduced to drink and drugs when I was in my sort of early teens. And I started drinking and doing cocaine and doing like smoking my first joint. And I wasn't necessarily like an addict then, but I definitely started to realize, wait a minute, there's these substances, and when I take them, I sort of feel a bit more numb and I don't really think about things so much, and it kind of solves some of my problems. So that really planted a seed and a cycle of me just using more and more and more. And then as I left school and went in to build my own company because I wanted to be an entrepreneur, I started to run my own company. And as things got more and more stressful and the business grew and we started to employ people and build things up, I would just drink more and do more drugs. And as things just escalated more and more and more, it went from celebrating this new client or celebrating that success to then, drowning my sorrows and using drugs. And it went from doing it every weekend from then Thursday through to Monday. And it just got to the point where it just escalated more and more and more until the point where I ended up just losing the whole company, and I was thousands of pounds in debt. And I just hit this rock bottom moment where everything in my life just kind of crumbled.
Isn't it crazy how when we first started, because I think I remember saying this on your show when I was your guest, how that first line that I did after not doing it for a long time, how I forgot about work, right? And it was like, oh my gosh, my mind's free. You basically said the same thing, how it draws us in, right? It's almost kind of like a new dealer, right? He'll give it to you for free just so you'll come back. And then we do the drug, and it's like it's given us this freedom just so we'll come back. And that's when it starts sinking its claws into us. And before we know it, we're in so freaking deep, we don't know how to get out.
Yeah, yeah. And it really just gets hold of you. And I think the thing is, I didn't really notice it creeping up. In some ways, I was like, I don't want to be like my mum. I don't want to be like that and cause that much pain to people. But secretly, in my kind of subconscious, I was just using more and more and more and more and more. And then and I kind of was trying to outrun this big bear that was behind me. And then it got to a point where I turned around and look, and the fucker was right there. And I'm like, Jesus Christ. So it just creeps up on you. And that's the thing. We never want to end up in the places we end up, right? I didn't want to end up losing my business, thousands of pounds in debt. I didn't start out as like a, whatever it was, 13, 14-year-old kid, smoking that first cigarette, smoking that first joint, thinking I'm going to end up there. Fucked. It was just where it ends up, and it creeps up on you, and the boundaries we set for ourselves get pushed more and more and more and more and more. And eventually we just end up in some really challenging situations.
Yeah. Yeah, that is so true. Because like you said, that's not our intention, right? For any of us, anybody who's battled with drugs or alcohol or porn or gambling or whatever the addiction may be, that's not our intention, is to hurt anyone, and not our intention to hurt us, right? We just think, as long as I'm keeping it to myself, I'm not hurting anyone. When in reality that you're hurting everyone and everything around you. And yeah, it just kind of creeps up on you, and just it nabs you. I remember my ex-wife, her father died of a heroin overdose. And during his addiction, he wasn't allowed to come inside our home. No one would really talk to him. He was kind of like the outsider, but he was the father of this family, right? And I remember how many times my ex-wife was putting her dad down. He's this, he's that, he does this to mom, and going on and on. And then she ends up falling into addiction. And then she finally started opening her eyes, going, oh my gosh, now I know what my dad was going through, right? I did not realize it was like this. And that's what happens to a lot of people on the other side of the addiction, is we don't really understand. We just think it's something that, I don't know, how many times, Luke, was you told by friends and probably loved ones, just stop? Why can't you just stop? I do. Why can't you? Right?
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, is that level of empathy and understanding when you've kind of been through it. Like for me as a kid, I didn't understand why mum drank and used drugs, and I didn't want her to do that, and I didn't really get it or understand it. And it wasn't until there was a time where I was going through my own journey after I lost my whole company. And I remember as a morning when I was sitting on a park bench, I just had to move from my penthouse flat into a house share. And I had to walk around the corner to, smoke a joint and sit on the bench. And I remember sitting there trying to call everyone in my phone book to manipulate them, basically to lend me money to keep using more drugs and keep drinking and keep going and going and going. But the thing is, over the past few weeks, I'd already called pretty much everyone in my phone book. And I remember how I had one number left. And this person, he was a business mentor and a good friend of mine. And he already had his own journeys and his own struggles. But I didn't have any other options left. So I pressed call and I rang him up. And as I tried to bullshit my way through the call, he just cut me off with a sentence that changed my life forever. How he said to me, Luke, you're a crackhead. And in that moment, although I'd never smoked crack, he just pierced all of my denial, and he made me wake up and realize, wait a minute, I'm an addict. I'm just like my mum. Like I never got it until that moment when he really said that to me. It really just shook me and woke me up. And I realized I was an addict heading towards death, just like mum. If I didn't change, if I didn't wake up and smell the roses, I was just going to keep going and going and going until I was dead, just like her. And I realized, fuck, I was on the other side. That side I never said I wanted to be on. I was there. I was on that side.
Yeah.
And that was a really, really big wake up call for me. And it was at that moment when I decided to start looking for help and really made a decision consciously to start to change and to move in the right direction.
Isn't that crazy? It was the very last number. I mean,
Yeah,
that's not a coincidence. I don't think. I don't feel like it's a coincidence. I think that was exactly how it was supposed to go down for you to finally drop that shovel and stop digging.
yeah, 100%.
Wow. Did he help you through your journey? Was he there to kind of help you get started, or was it just that sentence and you just took off from there?
Yeah, he's been one of my good friends for many, many years, still to this day. So he's helped me loads through the journey, not necessarily directly in the mental health side of things, but definitely in terms of my living situation, helping me in business, helping me build my career emotionally, and just being a good friend for all of these years. I've known him, yeah, so many years at this point. And yeah, he's been a really, really good friend to me and supported me loads, 100%.
And that's what we need, right? I mean, I don't know if they say this in the UK. Here in the States, we hear all the time the opposite of addiction is connection. And it's to be able to have that connection of people who are there for you to help kind of guide your way, especially at the beginning, right? It's kind of like you're walking through a dark tunnel and they know the tunnel very well and they're leading you to that light. So once you hit that light, you've pretty much got everything you need now to go in the direction that you need to go into. Because I mean, we can't do it alone. So that's really good that you had someone that you could fall back on to kind of help you get through where you needed to go.
Yeah, yeah. And I think connection was really important for me and played a vital role. I think one of the things that was good was living in a house share with other people in the house, like 5 or 6 of us in one house, was helpful because even just having people around was nice. That I wasn't on my own, and just having that those other people there to talk to and pass by. But another thing that was important, I did go to a few meetings. I went to a few Al-Anon meetings and a few NA meetings. But I also used to go into that friend's office and I used to go and sit there. I didn't work for his company or anything. I kind of picked up the scraps of what was left of my company from before and just sort of worked on that. But I used to get the train over 40 minutes and spend like 11, £12 on the train every day, which back then was a lot of money I could have been spending on drugs.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money back then. And I used to get the train every single day, and he used to sit in his office with all of his team and his staff around me, and he should sit there and work every single day to have that focus and that purpose and that connection. And we used to play ping pong in the office, and we used to, have banter and all those things. And that connection and structure really, really helped me so much to have those people around me, whether that was in meetings, at home, just living with people, or in the office and playing ping pong, and just having that camaraderie and that structure was just unbelievably helpful. And even though it didn't really make sense on paper to travel into some random person's office where you don't even work and pay money and an hour of your time each way to go there, it didn't make sense on paper. I knew for my recovery, it was just like fundamental. And even though people around me said it, wasn't the best idea, it was a waste of time and money, I just went every single day. And I just show up there and just keep working and working and working and being around people. And I think connection is so vitally important to really have people around you, whether that's close friends that are really good, or a community or meetings or a sponsor or a therapist, or even just people in your working environment. Having people around you is so cool.
Yeah, it really is. And however, just so our listeners also know, and of course, I know a lot of our guests have probably understand this. It's the right connections though, right? Because you can fall into the wrong ones and even ones that seem healthy, right? Because I wasn't healthy for when she was my wife. I wasn't a healthy connection for her because I didn't understand addiction. Even though I went through my own weekend bout, I didn't look at myself as an addict either. However, I still didn't understand the full effect of addiction, and all I did was make things worse. I finally got to a point umpteen years later when she would start talking to me about something. I'd say, I'm not the right person to talk to. You need to pick up the phone and you need to call someone who understands what you're meaning. Right. And there were certain ways I could be there for her, right? Like if she needed a hug, or just sometimes she got to where she'd say, I just need you to listen to me and not say a word. Got it. I would just sit there and just listen to her, because it can be also damaging the other way if you got someone who's actually throwing stuff back at you that starts making you feel like you're being belittled again and like you're worthless again, because that's kind of in a way what puts a lot of us in that spot in the first place. And to I don't know if you can still hear me. It looks like we froze up just a little bit. Can you still hear me, Luke? You still got me? Are you there? Are you there, Luke? Okay, I can see you moving now. You got me okay? You can hear me all right? Nope, I've lost him. Hopefully we'll get back on here soon, guys. Oh, there you
Yep,
go.
yep.
Okay, we got you again. We got you. And also having that connection. So I think sitting alone is like one of the worst things you can do, because I think that's when you start dwelling on things. And I think the opposition, who I call the devil, starts working on your mind and starts pushing you back towards that direction that you're fighting so hard to stay away from.
Yeah, exactly. And I think having, like you say, good high quality connection and doing a lot of sober activities. So this is one thing I teach clients and that we go through in our program, is looking at your peer group, looking at all the different people around you, and thinking about and finding at least 10 points of commonality. So looking down all the different things, like, yes, drugs and alcohol was one thing that I had in common with people around me, but also with where I was spending time, like ping pong was an example. We used to play ping pong in the office. That's a sober activity. We used to work together. We used to be in the same location. What you wear, the different activities you're into, thinking with all your different friends, at least like 10 things you have in common with them. And even if you don't want to lose them all and throw them all out straight away, definitely finding things you can do. Like when I was in the office with people and we were playing ping pong, that wasn't doing drugs, that wasn't drinking, that was a sober activity, and that's something really, really to pay attention to. It's the quality of time, even in NA or in meetings or even my therapist, right? Those people, I had things in common with them: the 12 steps, mental health, addiction, recovery, being in recovery. They were sober activities. And thinking and bearing in mind that when you think about all your peer group, thinking about the things you have in common with them outside of drinking drugs and doing those things in recovery, right? Sober activities with people, that's what's really important.
Yeah. Yeah. And giving back to the community, because that's what a lot of the people in the recovery community do, right? They're doing a lot of service work and giving back to others and the community, which is
Yeah.
huge. Yeah.
And that's one thing I did. I definitely took on a commitment in the meeting, and within the first couple of months, I got the keys to the church, and I used to go there and open up, right? And if I didn't show up, then there wasn't a meeting, right? And that was such amazing accountability, because it was like I had to be there, even though sometimes when I was like, can't be fucked to do a meeting tonight, like I want to do a meeting, another meeting, like so many meetings, I would just have the keys. So if I didn't show up, then no one showed up. So I couldn't face that newcomer, that person who's it's their first meeting, who the door was just locked, or they went to try and find in the church and they couldn't find it because Luke didn't show up and open the door.
Yeah.
So I definitely enjoyed that commitment and being held accountable to myself and other people, and to be there early and to make the commitment and to open up. And that was really, really important, taking on those accountability to stay on track.
Yeah. Isn't it crazy how that switched, right? Because you started a company that it was being successful, right? You were growing. And knowing that you were giving people a living, right? You were building a company, you hired people, they had a job, you were paying them to do a job, and but your addiction got you so much, it's like you were hurting them in the process, right? Because you wasn't showing up as the owner. However, now that your commitment's the other way around, even though you really are like some nights going, oh my gosh, I really don't want to do this, you're still showing up because now you know the importance, right? Because can you imagine how it would, I don't know, I can imagine how it would make me feel that if I was in charge of opening up the church and one day I just said, you know what, I'm not going today. I just don't want to do it. And then find out someone came to the meeting for the first time, like you said, and really needed that meeting. No one was there. They left, they used, and they overdosed.
Yeah.
Right? Especially if someone said, guess what? They showed up, but no one was here. I
Yeah.
mean, that would hit you pretty hard.
Yeah. 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 And that's the thing, that commitment helped me stay on track. And like you say, it's interesting to reflect on the commitment in the work context with all of the money involved and the cocaine and all those different things. You'd think, well, you're getting paid loads of money, surely you'd show up. But there was days when I didn't go in the office, when I didn't show up, when I didn't open the office for the staff, and I was there late and I was there hungover and I was just a mess. Even though I got paid effectively to do that. Whereas in the meeting in Al-Anon, right, the meeting I went to, I didn't get paid.
Yeah, right.
Not in physical money. I didn't get paid anything. No one paid me to show up. I was there from my emotional bank account, from my just care and commitment and willingness and value that I wanted to give to people and to myself and to be the meeting. But sometimes, money's not always the driving factor, right? Our emotional bank account is really, really important, and doing things for that sense of commitment and emotional connection can be so valuable. And just changing that focus is really, really important as well, to be able to shift from more of a financial mindset and from your financial bank account to more of your emotional bank account, and really looking after your emotional bank account and filling it up and focusing on it, rather than, for me, I was just also money focused all the time.
Yeah. My gosh, so true. May I ask, what was it, the business that you built so successfully?
Yeah, so it was a web design and marketing company. So we used to work with many different companies building their website and marketing them and growing them. And we built it up over a period of time and had an office. And yeah, it went really, really well. But it just wasn't where I was at in my own space emotionally. It just wasn't the right sort of place and time, wasn't sustainable.
Yeah. So as you coming out of your addiction and you're going to your friend's office, not getting paid, people telling you it's a waste of time. And we hear that a lot from individuals, friends and family, that what we're doing, it's a waste of time, or don't do it, or whatever. And we know, well, anyway, not all the time, but I think the majority of the time we know what's best for us, right? And the direction, especially when our mind is really focused on something good that we want to do. The business he had, was that in the same direction where you're at now with your businesses, what you're doing, where you're helping other individuals in their recovery?
No, that was a web design and marketing company as well.
Okay.
So he ran another web design and marketing. That wasn't in this sectors. And was because, and I remember saying, I'm just building websites for people. I'm just someone sell more cakes, and they're just building them a website and they're selling more cakes, and I don't give a shit if they sell more cakes. Like, it doesn't wake me up in the morning. They're just selling more cakes. And I remember having a big rant about it. I was like, I want to do something more meaningful. And then she suggested, why don't you change and do something else then? And then I went into working with clients with learning difficulties, and I sold what I kind of built up from the remnant of the business to that friend, and he kind of merged that with his web design company, and that was over there. And I went and did a degree in counselling, and then and worked in care and worked with clients with learning difficulties and mental health challenges. And then I went on, as I came to the end of my degree, to become a counsellor and set up the company I run now delivering counselling and online programs and video programs to clients all over the world. But I just decided to make that transition because I wanted to do something that was more fulfilling, that really woke me up in the morning and got me out of bed and really motivated me.
So, in all reality, Luke, your addiction ended up being your biggest blessing.
Yeah, 1000%. And I always say to people, one thing I learned from mum is her life wasn't an example, her death was the lesson. It taught me what not to do, right? It taught me that road, that tunnel has no cheese, right? The one of addiction, barring your head against the wall, that's not a good path to go down. And it really gave me a gift of having my own recovery. Maybe I needed her to die to give me the strength to be able to learn the lesson, overcome my own recovery. Maybe her death saved my life, whichever way you want to make of it. But it definitely gave me a lot of motivation and empowered me to change and grow and want to help other people in their mission and help other people and clients get their drink and drug use under control.
Yeah. So you're basically, I like to put it this way, you're basically one of the angels that God saved to now walk around and help others, put your hand out and help others in their journey because you've lived it, you've walked it, you know exactly what they're going through.
Yeah, exactly.
How about your brothers? Did your brothers fall into the same type of lifestyle that you did, or did they go different directions?
Yeah. I don't want to talk too much on their behalf or bring them
Okay.
into the public if they don't want to. But
Yeah.
I mean, one of them, he did struggle with drugs at a certain point, and we used to do drugs together. But he also got clean and had some therapy and got into personal development with me, and came along in some ways a lesser version of my journey. I went kind of all the way down the path, but he had therapy and he has a really good life. And the other brother, he's doing all good. So no one is kind of heavy in addiction or really down that rabbit hole. We're all kind of fairly balanced and sort of work on ourselves the best we can.
So you guys are actually the ones that broke the chain. You finally broke that cycle, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that was really important for me to personally break that cycle and not repeat that same sort of generational trauma. I think that was really, really important to learn that lesson and to really learn from it.
Yeah. Yeah. Because especially when you come from a background of addiction and being the one, I've had quite a few of my guests that I was the one that finally broke that chain because I don't want my kids to go down that same road. Now, not saying that they may not still, right? However, they have a better chance of not to because of what they've gone through, what their parents have gone through. I just had a guy on my show not too long ago who, I mean, he overdosed in front of his kids a couple times, right? And now where he's at in his life, he sits down and tells his kids, look, you can see where this can take you, right? Believe in yourself and have faith and be strong. And if there's anything you need to come and talk to me about, come and talk to me about, because you don't want to go down this road. You saw what I went through. You don't want to go through it because it's a nasty place to be. So, to finally cut that off, that's huge. And it says a lot for you. I believe anyway, it says a lot for you and your determination and who you are as an individual.
Yeah, definitely took a lot of strength. And for me, the piece of the puzzle that really helped was having addiction counseling. That really, really helped me. And that helped me really get my life on track. And I remember walking into that very first therapy session, and I really thought I would die or spontaneously combust from bringing up all that pain. I just shoved everything down for so many years. I didn't know what would happen, and I walked in there and I met this therapist and I just explained everything that's happened in my life and everything that's going on and just kind of emotionally vomited all over her in many ways and just got everything out. And that really, really helped me get my life back on track. And I went back week after week and the weeks turned into months and I've been in therapy, nearly 7 years now. And I've been keeping going and keep progressing and learning and gaining insights about myself and learning about myself and gaining that knowledge and understanding. I really find it as a helpful tool for me in my recovery to stay on track and have that private space for myself to reflect on what's going on. But having a therapist who'd really been through it herself, she'd worked in rehab, she knew what's going on, she, called me on my bullshit. She really helped me get things on track and helped me support me through all of those many, many years of recovery, which was really, really amazing. So for me, addiction counseling really helped, and that's what ultimately led me in many ways to become an addiction counselor and to sort of keep, moving forward and keep helping people in the way I was helped.
Sounds like you're climbing the same mountain I'm climbing, Luke, and that's one with no top. We just keep going, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know where that's going to end, but I think it's about constant improvement. I'm always working on myself, and that's why I haven't stopped therapy. Some people are like, "Are you still in therapy like 6-7 years later?" I'm like, "Yeah, because I'm still learning stuff. Like, why would I stop therapy if I'm still learning?" My life has changed loads in the past 6-7 years, and I'm still reflecting on things. I'm still growing. I'm still learning. It's like when I stop growing, then I'll stop having therapy because I won't need it, because I'll be complete and enlightened and I'll be Buddha meditating on a mountain. But I don't think that day is going to come, right? It's a constant evolution until the day I die. So, I think for me, I'm always growing and I'm always changing. I'm always trying to look at myself and move things forward. And that's a commitment I made, that I wasn't going to die an addict. When I was sitting there on that park bench, I was like, if I'm not going to die an addict, I'm going to become my best self. I'm going to work towards that. I'm going to become authentic. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to become my best self. And I've worked towards that, and I'm not perfect, but I'm certainly aspiring to be more enlightened, to be more emotionally mature, and to keep growing and moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I love that. I've said on the show many times, and even as a guest on some shows, I've said there is no finish line when it comes to bettering yourself. It's constant. It's a constant race, in my eyes. And I'm not saying really like a race against anyone else. It's, for me, it's a race with my life, right? I want to continue to grow. I want to continue to learn, and as long as I'm not going backwards, sometimes I may hit the mud puddle that's really thick and deep, and it may take me a little bit more time to get through it. However, as long as I'm still moving forward, even if it's an inch, I'm still going. And it won't stop for me until they put me in the ground as well. And I think that's how a lot of us need to look at it.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And it's really important to find those core group of tools that really work for you, that you can work on, and have that as part of your recovery and keep those going. Because I do find when people start to let those tools go, that's when they can start to slip or have a relapse. When they start to think that they've got it all under control, they're fine. They don't need to meditate anymore. They don't need to journal. They don't need to go to therapy. They don't need to go to meetings. Don't need to go to church, wherever it may be. I don't need to do any of that stuff. I'm okay now. Things are good. I could say that I've been in recovery 6-7 years. I'm all good. No worries. I don't need to do anything. Surely I'm fine now. But I don't do that. I stay humble, because if you feel like you're complete, or that you've finished it, or that you're better than that in some ways, then you're very, very close to a relapse, and you can easily slip and go back into those unhealthy coping mechanisms, those unhealthy ways of numbing out our emotions. So it's really important to stay on top of things and to stay on top of that recovery. And really, for me, one thing my therapist says to me every single week, or whenever I see him, is, "Luke, what are you doing to look after your inner child? How is little Luke? How's your inner child? What are you doing to nurture him? What are you doing to look after him?" And he always asks me that whenever I've got turmoil going on in my life, different stress going on. He always asks me that question. And it's just really, really interesting. It keeps me on my game, keeps me on my toes of just taking care of myself.
That's crazy that you brought that up, because I've been working with some coaches, And that's what they've helped me do, is bring the little boy back out, right?
Yeah.
And I'm getting into the habit of talking to that little boy me at night when I go to bed, right? We have a quick little conversation, and sometimes during the day, and it's so therapeutic. I mean, it may sound crazy to some people, however, it really is therapeutic, because I pick a number of me somewhere like between 7 and 9 years old, and that's who I am that I'm speaking to. And it really helps, because I remember what I looked like at that age, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if you don't, go back and look at some of your school pictures to get that visual. It helps a lot to talk to the little you inside.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And to nurture it and to take care of it. It was that 10-year-old inner child who didn't know what was going on, who didn't know why mum died, who didn't know why mum drank, who didn't get all of that. That inner child was just kind of somewhere in me, even as a teenager, as an adult, and I was just numbing it out over and over and over again by drinking and using drugs. So in my recovery, I really got in touch with that inner child, and rather than changing the way I feel with drinking drugs, I'm aspiring and continuing to learn how to soothe that inner child's emotions and calm him down and soothe him and relax him, and parent him in a proper way, set boundaries, have that internal self-talk like you're saying, have that communication, talk to him, understand what's going on. Why is he feeling anxious? Why is he feeling down? What is going on? Why does he feel out of control? What's happening in life? How can I soothe him in certain tumultuous times and really calm him down so he doesn't need to act out and go and use drugs? And that's why it's an ongoing process. I just aspire to be better and better and better at that every single month, every single year, just growing more and more.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. What would you tell our listeners how to handle a particular part of recovery? I mean, that's what really our topic was. And I know, reading your bio, you've actually developed some other tools that you use with your clients as well.
Yeah, yeah. So I think one of the important parts, I would say, is managing that inner child. I'd say that's one of the topics that's really, really important. And as I do a lot of work with clients, that's one of the things that comes up more often than not. Once we peel back all of the layers of the onion, it is really that sort of inner child work and managing that inner child. So some of the tactical ways that clients can do that is through soothing through the five senses. So whether that's things we see, like looking at the night sky or watching a series or anything like that, whether that's something we hear, like listening to nice music, listening to nice sounds and the sounds of nature, whether that's something we smell, like nice candles or nice food, whether that's something we taste, like different food. One of my favorite foods is Chinese. So whether that's having a nice Chinese or something along those lines, and tasting food and being really tasting it, or as a hug, whether that's changing your bed sheets to clean bed sheets, whether it's having a shower and feeling really clean. Paying attention to those five senses can be a really good way to soothe yourself and soothe that inner child and really calm things down. That's a really, really important one to focus on. And secondly, another one that's really important that I go over with clients is self-love. So I'll tell you a quick story about this. So when I used to go around my mum's and be around my mum when I was sort of 8, 9 years old, sometimes she would be drunk or gone or just not around the house. And I'd be hungry. And as a kid, I didn't really know what to do or how to make myself some food. And I remember one day going to the fridge and I opened the top of the fridge and it just stunk. So I just quickly closed it and I was like, I'm not going in there again. And then I opened the freezer and I rummaged around in the freezer and there was this little pizza that was like this big. And in the UK, they have these like frozen pizzas and you put them in the microwave for 2.5 minutes and then it comes out and goes ding and it's a little microwave pepperoni pizza and it smells like dog food, but it's actually really nice. And when you're a kid, it's kind of, a bit of a kid's food, but I used to eat those around mum's, right? Certainly not a Michelin star meal, but I ate it. And that's what I used to have when I was a kid. And it reminded me of mum. And when I was an adult, fast forward in many years, I had just moved into my own flat. And this was a time a few years ago when I moved into my own flat. This is the first time I could afford to pay for my own place. And I remember living there, and I just got some fancy pots and pans that I really liked. And I was thinking of ways to really show myself some love and give myself some love. So what I did, Al, is I made myself a lovely wing of skate, the fish, with Heston Blumenthal's triple cooked chips, and I made it with some peas. And it's very British, I know, fish and chips. And I made this lovely, what I like to call Michelin star meal. Of course, I don't have any Michelin stars in my kitchen at home, but my amazing best cooking I could ever make. And I put that on one side. And on the other side, I made one of those 2.5-minute microwave pizzas. And I put them both on the side. And I really looked at them and I thought, Luke, this is self-love. Making yourself this meal took me probably like an hour plus to make it, cooking it for myself. There was no one else there. And I just sat there and ate my lovely wing of skate and really showed that inner child, Luke, this is what you ate when you was a kid, one of the things you had around mums. And this is what you can do for yourself now. This is what the adult Luke is doing to soothe the inner child, to really show that child love and care, and that he's safe in his lovely new home with his lovely food. He's nurtured. He's all okay. He doesn't need to freak out. He doesn't need to use drugs. Doesn't need to feel all these crazy emotions. He's okay. He's loved and he's safe. And that was a really good example of showing that inner child self-love.
Wow, that's a great story. Thank you for sharing that. That is awesome. What a it's going back to, as kids, we imagine things, right? It's like we're imagined to be an astronaut or a doctor or a fireman or whatever it may be. And then we get in our adulthood and all that stuff leaves us. And bringing that inner child out, doing what you just said, what you just shared with us, that's bringing all that back out again and rewarding yourself, right? Going, my gosh, look how far I've come, right? From here to here. And it really does help build the self-esteem. I feel like it does anyway, right? It's like I can get through this freaking thing that they call life, because it's a bitch sometimes, man. It'll knock you on your ass and it'll keep you there unless you choose to get yourself back up and keep going.
Yeah, and in terms of self-esteem, it's not intentional, but having those microwave pizzas at mum's house, it taps into you subconsciously. I'm registering as a 8-9-year-old kid, this is all I'm worth. I'm not worth a lovely meal cooked for me. This is what I'm worth, is this 2.5-minute microwave pizza. That's all I'm worth. And then as an adult, making myself that lovely wing of skate Michelin star meal, I'm reprogramming that. I'm literally teaching that inner child, no, Luke, you're not worth shit. This is what you're worth. You're worth being a nice flat, putting in all the hard work for yourself. This is the value. This is what you're worth. So I'm literally in that moment reprogramming that low self-worth and bringing all my self-esteem up, bringing my self-worth up by loving myself and taking action to do that. And there's many different ways to have self-love. There's a book called The 5 Love Languages that breaks it down really well. And I'll break them down for you. So there's gifts. So we can give each other gifts and buy ourselves things. There's acts of service. So like making ourselves dinner, for example, that's a really good one, or doing something for someone. Then there's quality time. So spending time, being present, reading a book, having time with ourselves. There's physical touch, which is really, really important. And that can be anything from intimacy to anything else, to changing the bed sheets, any of that stuff. And then the last one is words of affirmation. So really being positive to ourselves, managing self-talk. And these work relationally as well as with the relationship with ourselves, which is the most important relationship.
Yeah.
But all of those 5 love languages are different ways we can really love ourselves and show ourselves acts of kindness and acts of self-love. And that really helps reprogram that inner child, re-nurture that inner child. And that if we can, again, soothe the inner child rather than just numbing it out with drink and drugs, and we can really soothe it and show it love and raise its self-esteem and nurture it and teach other people to nurture it appropriately by communicating our needs and asking to be loved in the ways we need to be loved. All of those things really, really help in recovery.
Absolutely. And so our listeners know, especially those who are just starting in their recovery journey, don't get so disappointed so quickly, right? It took you a long time to fall into your addiction. It's going to take a little bit of time for you to come out of it as well. Picture it as I don't know if you guys did this in the UK. I remember as a little boy in kindergarten, first grade, there was always a time in school where the teacher gave us some type of seed, and we had the little teeny plastic cups, and we had the soil in it, and we planted the seed in it. And we had, throughout the school year, we had to nurture this seed, right? And we got to watch it grow. And it's kind of like how it is with coming out of the addiction and rebuilding ourselves, right? You put that seed in there, and maybe for the first week of you watering it once a week or making sure the soil's staying damp and it's getting sun, you may not see anything, and you're like, well, I failed, right? And then all of a sudden this little teeny green sprout pops up, and it starts growing. And that's what it takes with us growing, right, on an individual basis. I read something the other day. Matter of fact, it might have even been this morning. I put it on my Facebook post about something about planting trees. I want to plant a lot of trees, and it's a lot of trees that I will probably never have the opportunity to sit under and be shaded, because by the time a tree gets big enough to do that, it's hundreds of years, right? However, to plant those trees and those roots for someone else to sit under, to me, that's a huge accomplishment. And that's something that I want to leave a legacy for other people, right? Is just start planting those. And the more of us that keep planting those, and the more trees that we leave for other people to sit under and to contemplate and think about life, to give them that opportunity to plant some trees for other people to sit under.
Exactly. And I really think being able to nurture people and have an impact on people's lives is amazing. And that's a lot in terms of what I see in the work I do now with clients, is helping people, right? Like the therapist that I went to in the beginning of my recovery, she helped nurture that little acorn in me to become a big oak tree that it is today. And I like to pass on that with other clients, and with the message that I put out there is to nurture those seeds in other people and see that positivity and have that belief, and to allow them and support them in nurturing their own seed in them to help them grow. And I think that's really important, to keep passing that on rather than passing on the generational trauma. What if we passed on all of the good shit we're learning, right? And all the good stuff. Isn't that a good idea? Why did we think of that before?
Right? So, yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, I think it's important to really think about that and the value we can provide and how we can help people and pass on that positivity.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you hit a good point there, Luke. It's like, why didn't we think of that before, right? It's like, why are we passing on the bad shit when we have the opportunity to pass on some good shit, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I love it. What else is there that you would like to share with our listeners today? An experience or whatever it may be.
Yeah, I think it's important for people to take the first step, right? I feel like it can be overwhelming sometimes, and we can often put it off. And a lot of the clients I speak to, they're like, oh, after Christmas I'll stop, or after John's birthday, or after this occasion, after that occasion, then I'll stop, then I'll really get things under control. And we just push it and kick the can down the road. And it can be really overwhelming to think, oh, I'm not going to drink forever, I'm not going to drink for 6 years, I'm not going to do this for 6 years or 7 years. Like, that's such a long time. But I think it's really important to go from the macro, and some of the things me and Al talk about on all of our progress in recovery, to the micro, and think, I started somewhere, just for today, just having that one day, that one step, just making that one next step from this podcast, for example, to reach out to someone, to go and find a counsellor, to find that support that you need, and to really have an inquiry and just take that first step on the journey and see where it leads.
Yeah. And again, why wouldn't you? Right. I mean, it's like taking that
Yeah,
first step when you try your first drug or your first taste of alcohol,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
You don't know where it's going to lead. And sometimes it leads us to the darkness, and other times it may lead us down the road a little ways. Then we say, okay, never mind, I'm done. So when it comes time for bettering ourselves, it's the same exact thing in my eyes.
yeah, yeah. It's like that seed is within you. Just give it that first bit of water. Put it on the windowsill so I can get one day of sunlight. Just start today. Just start today. And that's one thing I used to actually say to myself over and over again when I was early in my recovery, when things were really hard. I say to myself, Luke, you haven't been buried, you've been planted. And although you feel like you're underground now, your underground is dark, but you are going to sprout up above towards the sunlight, and you're going to grow, and it's going to be okay, and you can get through it. And I think having those positive words of affirmation is really, really important, to believe in that and just to have faith that we can actually make it through the soil to the sunlight and really come up and grow, because it can be really dark, having those really dark, really shit times where we can't see the wood through the trees, we don't know what's going on, we don't know if we can make it. Really having that faith and belief in ourselves is really important. That is possible, even if I don't fully understand it, don't understand intellectually how I'm going to get it. Just believe that if you keep walking in this direction, you'll be able to get there. You'll get there, and just having that faith is so important.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, faith is very important. Real quick here before we end the show, I remember taking some coaching, and they gave us a homework assignment, and they gave us 7 affirmations that they wanted us to go home, and they wanted us to memorize them, and they wanted us to look at ourselves in the mirror and say each one of those affirmations. I've been practicing a lot of this stuff. I post a lot of this stuff on my social media. So my ego kicks in, and I'm like, oh, hell, I got this. This is a piece of cake, right? I've been doing this. I got it, man. I'll come back next week. I'll blow everybody out of the water. I go home and I start doing my affirmations. And it took me a couple days to realize it. Every time I went to go say it, because the coach told us to look at ourselves in the mirror. Every time I went to go say it, Luke, I was looking away, and then I'd come back and look. And then I'd go to say the next one, and I'd look away, and then I'd come back and look. And I finally realized, I'm like, oh, hell, I don't have this. I'm not believing it. I don't believe it because I can't even look at myself in the mirror. I'm looking away when I'm saying it. That's telling me I don't have the confidence I thought I had. And it was such a huge eye opener. And I shared that with the rest of the class the following week. And I even shared, I'm like, yeah, I was an arrogant SOB. I really thought I had this. And yeah, it took me some time to realize I didn't have it at all. Because when you can literally look at yourself in a mirror, eye to eye, and say whatever it is you want to say, like you're amazing, you're incredible, you can do whatever it is you want to do, and you can look at yourself in the eye and believe it, you're moving forward. But if you're looking away, you still have work to do.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's such a powerful lesson, because we can intellectually be doing it and be like, well, you said, I'm going to smash the class, I'm going to do the best. I read my affirmations every single day, I did them amazing. But it's like, when you really reflect and go into the emotional space, like you say, are you looking at yourself in the eyes? Are you really connecting with yourself and focusing? And are you really present? Can you really believe it and feel it and let it radiate through your body? And I think sometimes in the beginning, it's okay not to 100% feel it, but to keep going and keep taking the action over and over again. Because I'm sure as you got used to it, Al, then you did start to believe it. Then it did start to show up for you. And yes, it takes time, but keep on going and going and going until you start to embody it. And it starts to go from that intellectual space down to the emotional space, and you start to embody it and be it. And you are really confident and growing and moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you got it. My gosh, Luke, it has been an absolute pleasure, buddy, to have you on the show, and thank you too for allowing me to be a guest on your show as well. I mean, I loved the interview that you did with me, and I loved our interview together. I think we've shared a lot of good information, and for people to come on the show and share their vulnerability, open up their vulnerability, and let them know a part of their life that wasn't so great, and to hear where it's at today, it goes to show it works, right? If you put your mind to it and it's something you really, really want to do, you can get out of that darkness. And you said some key words today, like the faith and believing and bringing that inner child out. And you start using just those few tools right there. It really does help you start digging yourself out of that hole. It actually starts throwing dirt in the hole so you can help yourself climb out of it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there you've shared so much great information during this show. For one last thing, is there anything, what would be your main message for our listeners today?
Yeah. The main message is just to start, right? That, you can do it as well. I think sometimes we look over people, oh, Al and Luke, they're so good in their recovery, but they don't have my story, they don't have my thing, they don't have my thing going on. And we kind of compare each other and compare our traumas and compare our stories. But it's really important to own our shit and understand that we can do it. It's okay. And when I first started, I looked around people and I was like, oh, I can't do it. Maybe I'm not a real addict. I haven't done crack heroin. Like, I'm not good enough. But really just starting is the most important thing. Taking that step on the journey and just putting one foot in front of the other and moving forward. I think that's the most important thing for people to do, and the best place for the.
I agree. Great information. Thank you for sharing that. That was awesome. Luke, again, man, I love you, brother. Thank you. I feel I don't know. There's just been a great connection, I think, between us both, and I've really enjoyed having you here, and I'm honored to have you on the show. And I think we froze up again. Nope, now we're back. And I just want to say Merry Christmas to you guys. Christmas is coming up here real quick, and I wish you all the best and everything. And again, thank you so much for taking time out of your, I guess, evening. Is it evening there or morning?
Yeah, it's evening here. It's evening here. And
Okay.
thanks very much for the Christmas wishes and happy Thanksgiving to you. Hope you had a nice time. And yeah, awesome. It's been great to connect and talk with you. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. And don't sign off quite yet. So I'll be right back with you. But hey guys, thank you to all our listeners, all our guests, all our sponsors. Thank you guys for all the love and the kindness that you show, man. Again, this wouldn't be happening if it wasn't for you. This is just a platform. You guys are the ones that are making it successful. We're going to leave you with this as we do at the end of every show. Remember, addiction is giving up everything for one thing, and recovery is giving up one thing for everything. We're out.